Millions of Americans could soon be forced out of their homes. A federal eviction moratorium is set to expire at the end of the year. The protections were initially part of the CARES Act, which Congress passed back in March, but those expired at the end of July. The CDC stepped in after Congress failed to reach a new stimulus deal. Using its authority under the Public Health Service Act, the CDC put a new ban on evictions. Now that ban is set to expire on December 31st. For more, I'm joined by CBS News Money Watch reporter Irina Ivanova. Thank you so much for joining us, Irina. Today, how many Americans are we talking about that could lose their homes in the coming months?
There have been some estimates out on this, and they're a little bit all over the place, but we're talking about millions and millions of people potentially in any situation. Just last week, we saw a report from the University of Arizona and the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. They looked at census data, and they figured that about 7 million, nearly 7 million households could be evicted.
I am currently being harassed and getting ready to be evicted during the pandemic. Now, where are you gonna go? Who's gonna go? I mean, come on, think about it.
Yo siempre estoy pensando cuándo se van a aparecer, qué es lo que sigue, otra vez voy a encontrar la puerta cerrada.
It just shows the utter lack of care for the people of this country that aren't the ultra wealthy. Like, this has devastated me, and I'm just one person.
Been evicted, she's packing her bags, and she fears that she's not alone and knows that with the coronavirus that has no end in sight, there'll be more people just like her.
You need more paper?
It hasn't been a year since Lisa Pradia unpacked to move in.
This is a lot.
Yet here she is packing up to move out. The eviction ruling on her coffee table, the reason why.
Never thought I'd be in this situation ever.
Facing eviction during a pandemic like a growing number of Texans who, just like Pradia, never thought they'd see the day or days, beginning when she lost her job.
It was March 2nd. And what I did was immediately, I called 211, and they gave me a list of different entities that I could call to try to get help.
She says she used her stimulus check to pay partial rent on the home she leases in Richmond. By April, Pradia received word a local charity would help her. All she would need is for her landlord to fill out a W-9. She called him.
He's going to take a look at it, and he'll get back with me. Only he didn't get back with me.
3-day notice to vacate for non-payment of rent. The landlord shall commence all necessary legal proceedings.
For Heather Hartman of Baytown, it was the hardest letter she ever had to read. The eviction notice, telling this single mom and all of her children they would soon be put out on the street.
Baby, it's okay. Everything's gonna be okay, okay? Calm down. You hear me? It's okay. God's got us.
Heather is a hard-working single mom raising 5 children all by herself who lost her job as a grocery store clerk when COVID-19 shut everything down 7 months ago. She applied for unemployment, but it hasn't been enough.
But unfortunately, I only get $204 a week, so you cannot live off of $204 a week.
$204 a week.
$204.
Quickly, Heather felt $1,500 behind in rent. She couldn't find a job, and then came that dreaded eviction notice.
The most brutal time is being evicted from my home and my landlord not understanding that there's something going on worldwide, and that this isn't just an excuse for me not to pay my rent.
We are definitely seeing an uptick in incidents of landlord harassment. Landlords are, in a number of cases that I'm aware of, moving themselves or sometimes people off the street into apartments with their existing tenants so as to harass them and intimidate them and encourage them to voluntarily leave the apartment.
Bueno, ella me utilizó para ella entrar y poder sacarme junto con los dueños. Yo duermo en la cocina, tuve que botar mi cama porque pues esta muchacha se quedó en el cuarto. municipio hay mucho abuso. No solo yo, hay muchas personas que me han contado, los están desalojando, personas que no saben ni siquiera dónde ir, cómo hacer una pregunta, cómo pedir ayuda. Ellos pasan por lo mismo, solo que ellos no, a veces ellos pueden más su miedo y se terminan yendo del lugar.
These are the sorts of tactics that a lot of landlords are resorting to when they effectively can't move forward with legal eviction proceedings.
I had brain surgery on June 16th, and when I got home, everything was just destroyed.
Constitutes of an illegal lockout is changing the locks on a building, throwing tenants' possessions out, or using verbal or physical intimidation or harassment techniques to make people feel unsafe and basically imply that they have no other option but to leave. And all three happened to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New section, obviously, the COVID impact question somehow.
Grace Ross is drowning in paperwork. Literally, her office is filled with boxes overflowing with affidavits. The housing crisis in this country, she says, has taken on a life of its own.
We're talking about a long-term economic impact.
Grace runs an anti-foreclosure nonprofit where every day her team is fielding calls from people who have run out of money to pay their rent and are now facing eviction proceedings.
People are panicked. They're just, I think with the low-level panic that we're all running around COVID already, and then you add the fact that they're looking at elders who will die if they're on the street regardless of COVID, or children who won't be able to go to school remotely.
COVID cases are also spiking across the country, and Americans who are trying to quarantine at home to stay safe are in jeopardy of losing their homes.
It's just really overwhelming and scary because we don't know, what's going to happen in there. They could say we got to move out in a week, and we don't know.
Both of you lost your jobs.
Yeah.
118 evictions are on the docket today. Among them, Umu Conte.
I work in the nursing home. When I get infected with the COVID.
Conte says she contracted the virus in June at the nursing home where she worked. The U.S. resident, an immigrant from Sierra Leone, was out of work for 2 months. She's now working as a home health care aide, making $12 an hour. It's not enough to pay the rent she owes.
They give me 30 days. I'm just thinking about my kids. Where did I go with my kids?
Everywhere you turn, a different face shares an economic plight that landed them here.
And why did you do that?
For non-payment of rent.
Cases filed against tenants despite a national moratorium on most evictions until the end of the year. In Columbus, financial aid and pro bono lawyers sit on the wings of Magistrate Kirk Lindsay's eviction court.
These are certainly unprecedented times from my perspective.
Working to get that moratorium information to tenants, like the Turner family.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just scary for her because this is like our first apartment. Like, we're new really to the adulthood.
They're new parents.
This is home for Lee Petty. The 74-year-old worries how much longer it'll remain home.
Hope springs eternal.
The rent was due today. Lee didn't have the money to pay it. His $1,500 a month in Social Security just isn't enough.
I have a son who lives in Seattle, and he knows nothing about how close to the edge I am.
Lee's among the thousands of people in Dallas facing the prospect of eviction. The stay-at-home computer work Lee once did dried up with the COVID-19 pandemic. He fears working away from his house due to health concerns.